So I think it would be great if we could cover some information about bedwetting for our children.
Yeah.
If you can tell us, often we'll get messages saying that they're not sure. Should they wait until, at what point do they start considering bedwetting and so on, or removing the nighttime nappy?
Bedwetting is very common, affects all children. I think it's important to reiterate that bedwetting is not because the child has got Down syndrome.
No.
Bedwetting is something that affects all children, typically developing or otherwise, and we know at age 4 and 5 about 20% of children will wet the bed, and by the time they're 7 that's dropped to about 10%, and we know for teenagers it's about 1 to 3%, and we know that within the adult population about 1 to 2% will still wet the bed. So it's something that affects anyone, not particularly because the child's got Down syndrome. Children usually become dry at night with either spontaneously as they're becoming dry in the day, or within about 3 to 6 months of being dry in the day. It's considered normal under the age of 5. But once children reach the age of 5, then it is considered a medical problem, which can and should be treated. And I think that's important as well, that parents are not fobbed off if they've got a 9-year-old dry in the day, since they were 4 or 5, and still having to wear a nappy overnight. It's a medical problem, and it can and should be treated. We know bedwetting runs in families. So if mum or dad or cousins or uncles or grandparents wet the bed, there's likelihood that subsequent children can, also wet the bed. So I think and there's a variety of factors that actually cause bedwetting. And so it's important any child over the age of 5 who's been dry in the day for at least 6 months should have an investigation to see exactly what the cause of the bedwetting is. We obviously want to exclude any medical reasons, but we also know that constipation can be a contributory factor. And there's a number of factors, as I say, that can contribute towards the bedwetting. When, as the child's body matures and we go asleep, various chemical messengers or hormones are released from the body to put us in a sleep mode. So when we go asleep, everything slows down. Our breathing slows down, and our kidneys should slow down. So overnight, we should only produce around about 1 bladder full of wee. If you think about it, if nothing happened, we'd all be up in the night going, unfortunately, once you reach a certain age, that still does happen. But most people can sleep all night without having to get. And this is down to a chemical messenger or a hormone called vasopressin, which is released from your brain, goes to the kidneys and says, right, it's night time, concentrate the urine, only produce 1 bladder full. And this usually kicks in by the time a child is 5. And that's why up to the age of 5, it's considered normal. The other issue is that even though the kidneys have produced less wee, you've got to have a bladder that's big enough and relaxed enough to hold on to that wee for, 8, 9, 10 hours of a night. And so the size of the child's bladder and the ability of the child's bladder to store the urine could be a factor as well. And the third thing that could be a contributory factor is what we call arousability, the ability of the child brain to recognize body signals and external stimuli when they're asleep. Most of us, if there is a noise or we don't feel well, and particularly if we're, for example, in a hotel, we hear every door opening, our brain is attuned to wake up. And mums, I always remember a friend of mine saying, her husband saying how wonderful the newborn baby is, that the baby sleeps all night. And the mum says, what? I am up and dad blissfully sleeps through the whole thing while mum wakes up to the tiniest sound from the baby and what have you. But for some children, that ability to wake up or arouse to either sounds or body signals hasn't fully kicked in.
Right.
And mums will often say, oh, you can sleep, there was a thunderstorm and your little Johnny slept right through.
Right.
Now, all children who have a bedwetting problem have a problem to a greater or lesser degree with this, what we call arousability.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, normally in the day, you know, our bladders will tell us we need to do a wee.
Yeah.
And that happens at night as well. Most of us, if we need a wee, we'll wake up and go. But for these children, no matter how strong their bladder signals are, they don't wake up.
Right.
And they just wet the bed. So all children to a greater degree have a problem with what we call a lack of arousability. Some children may also have a problem with lack of vasopressin. So they're producing too much wee overnight. And these children typically will wee within a few hours of going to bed. So we say to the parents, just, you know, when you go to bed, just check the child's bed or check if they've got a nappy on. Just check the nappy, and if it's wet, that does make us suspect they've got this problem, that even though they're asleep, their kidneys are still producing all this wee.
Okay.
And the other thing we need to check is the child's bladder capacity in terms of, are they able to hold on to night times wee? And that's why it's important they have an assessment, because these things are treatable.
Right.
So there's something the parent and the child...
Okay, with medication?
With lack of the vasopressin, it's easy to treat. They just top it up with an artificial hormone, which just tops up and enables the child to sleep through the night. And a lot of the issues is the child doesn't tend to drink, or they drink at the wrong time. They don't drink in school, but they drink when they're home. Right. And of course, all their fluid intake is of the evening, and that's why they
make it harder.
So,
okay, so I guess there's the sort of issues where there's a medical problem around bedwetting, as you're saying, if they're over 5 and been dry in the day for more than 6 months or so, they should definitely, you know, pursue that with their GP. For those who are just looking to get out of nappies at night time and they're not sure yet whether the child's ready or not, we often, I remember you saying, I think with my children, I might have done this and I did it wrong, but hey ho, not to take them out of bed as you're going to bed. So this is more, there's not a medical issue, but you're thinking that you want to take them out of nappies at night time. Yes. But you say it's better. And it's about, you know, the sort of good practice then is about when to have the last drink and not taking them out of bed and putting them sort of almost in their sleep on the loo.
That's right.
So just to share a bit about that.
Controversial is what's called lifting and taking them to the toilet. Yeah. Because in some instances, parents will say, well, I do that and he's dry. Okay. But we're not sure whether that's actually helpful because you're artificially emptying the bladder. Right. During most of the time, the children are asleep or half asleep and they have no recollection. So what the parents are actually doing is encouraging the child to wee when they're asleep. And it's also not enabling the bladder to learn to hold on to 8, 9, 10 hours, 12 hours of wee. So some parents will do it like if they're away for the weekend.
I think when we did it, we didn't do it for long. It certainly wasn't.
But the jury's still out but as a general rule, we suggest not to do that. Right. There is a group of children who we suspect actually are not bedwetters per se, but they're early morning wetters. So they wake up, particularly in the winter when it's a bit cold and dark and they're all cosy in the bed and they need a wee. If you've got a nappy on that mummy's put on, are you going to get up out of bed and trot, you know, barefoot to the toilet, which may be downstairs in some cases, to do a wee? Or are you going to do a wee in your nappy in bed? Yeah. You're going to do it. So if we suspect that the child actually is able to stay dry mostly through the night, but it's just that early morning waking up wee that they do, what we suggest is, and if you're going to pick a time to do it in the summer when it's light and what have you, and easy to get washing dry, is to take the nappy off for a few nights and see what happens. Obviously making sure you protect the bed, and also leave suitable reward, maybe a little biscuit or something in the bathroom.
Okay.
So if the child gets up and goes for a wee, there's a biscuit there or something.
Right.
Or for much younger children, leave a potty in the bedroom.
Right.
So that's there, and that's a visual. If I need a wee, there's the potty to do it in.
Yeah.
And just say, and obviously, if and particularly if they've started, you find they've started to have the odd dry night. That's another time to have a go and leave the nappy off and see what.
How many nights do you think people should wait? When they're going, oh, it's been about 6 months now. We've had a dry nappy. Think of that money they've spent.
We used to say if they've had a week or two,
just a week or two,
with dry nappies, then have a little go. And if you find that they're wetting more than 3 consecutive nights, put it back on. Okay. And the thing about bedwetting, it's not something that can be taught like daytime. We've got our 4-step toilet training program that we're doing for the daytime. Becoming dry at night is a physiological process. Right. We can certainly help and support that by making sure the child drinks regularly through the day, they're not constipated, and they have their last drink an hour or so before they go to bed and do a big wee before they go to bed. But other than that, it's depending on the child's physiological development. Okay. So taking the nappy off for a bit and then putting it back on is not an issue. Right. In terms of, but we wouldn't want to promote you doing that in the day. That would just be too confusing. Yeah. But certainly, if you've got children who are rising 6 and 7 and still in a nighttime nappy and they've been dry in the day, some children have been dry in the day for a few years or more, then definitely seek help. Yeah. And most areas have local children's community bladder and bowel services where they run special clinics for children with bedwetting. And as we want to emphasise, having Down syndrome is not a reason not to be referred. People say, oh, it's because he's got, it's not because he's, it's because, and just so if you hear this word enuresis, it's the medical name for bedwetting in children over the age of 5. Okay. One of the other treatments which we can briefly mention is the parents may have heard of is the wetting alarm. And that's something we use sometimes for children in the day, particularly older children, to help raise awareness of bladder signals. And it's something that we can use at night for children with bedwetting, but we have to carefully select the child to see if they're suitable, because it can be quite onerous on the child and family. The treatment can take up to 6 months, and it could be 6 months of disturbed night's sleep. Oh, so okay. Like toilet training in the day, programs for bedwetting should be individualised for each child and their family. Yeah. See what works best for them.
Thank you, June. And obviously through DSUK, we do run information sharing sessions specifically around bedwetting, and families and professionals can join our closed Facebook groups if they're in the UK to access advice and support. Yep. Brilliant. Thank you. Okay.